Welcome back in. Someone who knows the former president well and served in his administration, former Attorney General Bill Barr, is here with me. Mr. Attorney General, welcome to In the Courts.
Thank you, Katie. Good
Thanks
to be
for joining
here.
us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So starting off the top, some people argue that this indictment, this criminal case, is the most important in American history because of the allegations getting at the foundation of American democracy, the voting system, but also because this is the only criminal case against the former president that has to do with his conduct in office and trying to keep that office. So do you think, is it the most important criminal case in American history?
Well, for the second reason, that it's first time a president has been indicted for something like this, and it will have consequences for who's the next president potentially. Yes, it's among the most important thing, but as a matter of law, as to the legal issues being addressed, I'm not sure that that they're that monumental.
Why?
Well, because I think the conduct here was clearly very bad conduct. And the question is it a stretch? Is it, an abuse to treat it as defrauding the government and also obstructing a proceeding? And I don't think it is. I think this is the way the government would normally be expected to respond to this kind of behavior, that is subverting a fundamental proceeding. Now, you could say, as a prudential matter, should the case have been brought? And there's some reasons not to have brought the case, but this attack, saying this is an abuse, it's weaponization, this is not a crime against humanity. It may have been a poor judgment to bring the case, but the case is a legitimate legal case.
You may mention that there are reasons maybe not to bring the case. What would that be?
Well, I do think you have to, I think the reasons don't have to do with fairness to Trump. One reason to not bring this case is not because it's unfair to Trump. Okay? It has to do with its impact on the public and the public interest.
Do you think it's a political act not to bring the case?
Yes, it would be largely based on politics, but in a good sense, which is the public interest. Do we want to have this kind of divisiveness, especially given their inept handling of the Biden matter, which to me was inexplicable. I mean, it's just what they've done with the Biden case. And I'm talking about the Hunter Biden case and the issue of whether Joe Biden was involved in some of that. And it just exacerbates the whole perception, which I think is a legitimate perception, that there's a double standard at the Department of Justice. And bringing an aggressive case like this, while not an abuse, at a time where you're not being very aggressive against the president's son, I think has a bad impact on the public and on the perceptions about the Justice Department. That's a legitimate consideration. I also think, by the way, that this case helps Trump. And in that respect, it does affect the election by, it turns out, by going after Trump, you're really helping Trump a great deal. I wonder if that's a wise thing to do. So there are, and I think arguments that this could have a chilling effect on legitimate activity, political activity in the future. Will it inhibit people from challenging election results? I think it's a bit overblown, but I think it's a legitimate consideration. So that doesn't mean it's an invalid case, but it goes to whether it's prudent to bring it. And I'm not sure I would have approved it, but I think the attacks against the department on this are sort of over the top at this point.
Just because you mentioned the Hunter Biden case, do you think what he's been offered is a sweetheart deal, as people are saying?
I definitely do believe it was. And I also think the department was holding all the cards, went into those discussions and came out with all its pockets picked, and I don't understand why that happened. But the other thing is that it has to be clarified, and I think the AG has to provide assurance that there has been a vigorous investigation of all the red flags that have come up about whether Joe Biden was participating in these profits that his son, and was helping his son's business essentially sell access. And he was the access that was being sold. And that has to be investigated, and I'm worried, given the ambiguity of what the prosecutor is saying, Weiss. what has he been doing for 2.5 years? This has to be clarified.
I want to ask you about a senior unnamed co-conspirator, a senior DOJ official in the indictment. We have now been able to deduce that that was Jeffrey Clark. He worked under you in 2 different positions, both with ENRD, Environmental and Natural Resources Division, and as acting head of the Civil Division. You were colleagues, you worked together. What's your opinion of him?
He was sort of a Casper Milquetoast kind of guy, and I was sort of surprised that he ended up, trying to overthrow the leadership of the Department of Justice so he could carry out a part in this whole episode. He was a experienced litigator in the environmental field, and he handled as you said, the environmental group. And then toward the end of the administration, with not much time left, the head of the Civil Division that handles civil litigation left, and because he was an experienced litigator who had already been confirmed and was at a senior level, we moved him over laterally to that vacancy. Were
you surprised to see him listed as an unnamed co-conspirator? Did any of these allegations surprise you?
Of what he did?
Yes.
No, I mean, I'd read stories about this, and obviously the people involved in it at the department who he was trying to overthrow, namely Jeff Rosen and Richard Donahue, are people I know, and I'd heard some stuff about this.
Knowing what you know now about what President Trump did while he was still in office, you were investigating some of the claims that he was making and doing the due diligence there, assuring him that they were not true. And knowing that some of the allegations that are contained in here, do you think that he belongs in prison?
I don't think he belongs in the White House or in the Oval Office, but I don't like the idea of us putting former presidents in prison. And so I hope this doesn't end up with him in prison, even if he's convicted.
The idea is because he's a political opponent of the current president. But this...
No, but also, I mean, I think it makes us look a little bit like a banana republic. I don't like the idea of using the criminal justice process much in politics. I think we use it too much. I'm not saying this is not a legitimate case, but I just don't like the idea of taking people who have governed the United States as our foremost magistrate and putting them in prison unless it's really a serious abuse that most of the country would agree with. And I think here, as long as a lot of the country thinks that this is not that this is a political effort, I think that would be a mistake.
Former President Trump essentially ran on one of the campaign slogans, "Lock her up," about his political opponent. Did you share those concerns or express those then, or about that?
Which concerns?
That he ran on the campaign slogan, "Lock her up," which would be essentially the same thing of locking up a political opponent or using the Department of Justice.
Yeah, he at some point he became very mad at me. He didn't directly confront me, but he was upset that more action wasn't taken against Hillary Clinton. But the ironic thing is, in that one of my first conversations with him, he said, I don't think she should be locked up. And I think that
He didn't tell the public that one.
No, and nor did I at the time. But because it would make us look like a banana republic, and we have to move beyond that.
I just want to ask you, because we have your expertise here, having been the Attorney General twice, and this is a conversation topic that came up during the Mueller investigation. Is it possible, if he is elected in 2024, for him to pardon himself? Is a self-pardon by a president legitimate, do you think?
That's nothing I feel I can opine on, because I haven't studied it.
But it did come up a lot during the Mueller investigation.
Yeah, but it never got to the point where I felt I had to crack the books and really study the matter. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I think that the Constitution doesn't limit it that way. There's nothing in the Constitution to say he couldn't pardon himself. So I'd want to look and see if there's what are the basis for an argument that inherently it's could not have been conceived that he could pardon himself.
All right, Mr. Attorney General, thank you for joining us
Thanks,
in the courts.
Katie. Thank you.
We'll have much more to come right after this. Don't go away.